and you are a very interesting human being, and I just kind of want to get your approach, your perspective on everything. So I guess just kind of started off by introducing yourself, and from there, I just want to know more about how you got into financial services and your approach to financial services.
Well, thank you, Joanna, and thank you for having me. Apparently, I'm a very interesting human being, whatever that means. Um, yeah, well, I started back in 2022, April of 2022. I remember seeing an Indeed ad for our company, Rise North Capital. Um, and, kind of even backing up before that, I had graduated high school from Western Massachusetts and I attended UMass Amherst, which, for those of you who know what UMass Amherst is, it's a gigantic party school, crazy big party school. Um, Attended there. I actually flunked out.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't finish my bachelor's degree there. I got between our family being very broke and me doing not great but okay in school, I almost got a full ride to UMass Amherst, and I put it all in the toilet, basically. So that didn't feel amazing. But after I stopped going to college, I basically tested out the job market, right? So I did almost every, and people who know me make jokes about this all the time. Dom's done every single job that you can think of. I've done food services, I've done lawn care, landscaping, I've done security jobs, which those suck, by the way, if you've ever done one of those are terrible. Um, and I even door knocked solar, right? Like I did solar sales and knocking on people's doors. Major respect to anyone who makes a career out of that stuff, because that I think is one of, if not the hardest form of sales. So I did that, and then up until I joined Rise North, I was actually a driver for FedEx. Um, I learned a lot in that job, but mostly kind of a miserable experience. I was laid off on Christmas after working until almost 2 in the morning, right? From Christmas Eve through Christmas.
they laid you off on Christmas Day.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we won't bring up too many memories there, but it wasn't great, right? And I was making about $20 an hour, and that was a raise for me. I remember getting paychecks for like, you know, around $1,000, and I was like excited. I was like, man, I'm making real money now. And then I proceeded to basically be laid off for the next 3 to 4 months before I finally started interviewing with Rise North Capital. Um, and so when I joined, my hiring manager, of whom I won't mention his name, it felt like I did at like 20 million interviews with this guy. And, I was captivated by the wisdom he had, and I felt like I could learn a lot from him. And so I trusted his guidance. I came into the business, and so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the start of my career. Um, Now, in my actual career, I mean, for the first 8 months, I probably made about $40,000, right? That's not bad, I certainly didn't feel bad about that. And for those of you who work in client services, clients don't come to you, you have to find them, right? So for me to find my first $40,000 worth of money felt really good. I was able to pay my bills, quote unquote, not have my current fiance mad at me, at the time. And so pretty much once I started being able to pay my bills, I'd say my effort kind of plateaued at that point, right? Because now I'm comfortable, right? I don't have that existential crisis anymore, you know. Um, so
Would
the
you, sorry to interrupt,
no,
would
go
you
ahead.
say that's something that you see a lot with people coming into the industry or even in other industries too, where once they feel like they've earned a set amount of money, or maybe now they've hit a point that they didn't think they could hit, now they're comfortable, and as you said, the effort just plateaus. Do you think that's something that you see in a lot of other people too?
I think it might be an intrinsic part of human nature, to be honest. I think, I think the question basically that's being asked there is, do we tend towards comfort or discomfort, right? And I would bet a lot of money on people wanting to gravitate towards comfort, you know? Um, and so once you've achieved your goal or achieved the level of lifestyle that you originally envisioned, I don't think people have, um, at least in that moment immediately, a lot of motivation to work harder than they already have been. I think they need another external event, or, maybe they have an awesome husband, wife, partner, or business partner maybe that pushes them. But I don't think people get to that point by themselves personally.
So I know that when you were at that point, something happened, and I don't really know what, where it was a complete 180. Um, I'll let you speak on the actual numbers and how it happened, but I do remember that all of a sudden you were working 24/7, and that's not an exaggeration by any means. I had access to your calendar at the time, and I remember looking at it sometimes, and my head would spin because you were fully booked from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Whether it was client meetings or whether it was trainings or new skills, or you were just fully booked where it felt like there was almost no time to breathe. But that happened, at least from my perspective and maybe other people's perspectives, it came about almost like in the snap of a finger. But I'm sure for you, either something had to occur or there was a mindset shift. So how did you get there, and also what did you get from that?
How did I get there and what did I get from that? So I'll start with how did I get there? Um, so if I kind of go back to like the order of events, right? Um, I went to college and then that didn't work out. And by the way, not for finance, just to be clear. I was on a physical therapy track. And I was an athlete actually at UMass. So that this has nothing to do with finance. So complete 180, went into the job market, joined our group Rise North, um, broke even on my bills, then got comfortable. Um, Basically, from there, what was happening was a couple of things. Firstly, I really have to give a lot of um, credit to my direct manager. Again, I won't mention his name, but he, one thing that he's awesome at is always pushing you to try and be the best version of yourself. And I would say that generally speaking, I'm like, I have pretty high goals and aspirations, but he pushed me to have them even higher. So I have to thank him. Um, Second, uh, I always envisioned having, you know, money at some point in my life. Clearly, um, making 40K, uh, living in Massachusetts is not money at all, right? Able to live, but not able to thrive. And so I kind of had in my head that maybe I could coast along and get there. Um, there's certain aspects of my life where I've kind of been, I guess, people could call me like talented in certain aspects, like the classic cliche parents and people always say that you're like smart growing up, right? Which, by the way, I think is very dangerous and not helpful. I want to be clear. Um, and so for me, it was really about getting away from that mentality of leaning on to talent and
Mm.
kind of like, I'll just, happen to float into success and saying like, no, I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I'm gonna grab this thing by the and I'm really gonna like, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna compress the timeline. And I actually want to talk about that too. A little bit more of a background on me. I'm the oldest of 8. I have 7 younger brothers and sisters. And I don't know if this is like a toxic like hero mentality or something like that, but I've always envisioned myself as like I have to rescue not only my siblings but a lot of my family members from our like garbage, super poor, like we don't have any money, nobody went to college, just rescue everybody from that lifestyle, right? And I felt like I was positioned in a way where like, oh, wait a minute, Dom, you have an opportunity to make money here, right? At a certain point, I kind of just, I don't know, it might not make sense, but that kind of clicked in my head. And I'm like, oh, wait, maybe you should stop playing League of Legends during the Friday morning meetings while everybody else is talking and you're supposed to be paying attention. Maybe you should actually start like really working. And I did.
Well, going back a little bit to how you said a lot of people viewed you as talented growing up, or considered you smart or intelligent, you were potentially maybe that gifted child. Do you think that's why you felt or you feel today the responsibility of, well, my family views me as as this talented person, so I owe them XYZ? Is that why you feel that, or is it more of a because you have the opportunity to do it, it's almost a responsibility?
Great question, Joanna. Firstly, let me make it clear. Um, I get imposter syndrome like all the time, you know? Um, like I think it's sweet and the intention is nice and caring when, people tell a child that growing up. Um, but, I don't generally feel like that person. I feel like the role has been thrust upon me, if that makes sense.
It completely makes sense because I know exactly where you're coming from, where I was also a very academically gifted kid, where I never had to try. I never had to try to do better than most people in school. So I could show up for an exam, not really know anything that was going on, and still do better than the majority of the classroom. So there was never an emphasis on me to work hard or to put
Yeah.
in effort just because I just expected it to happen without me doing anything.
Right.
So, yeah, it is very dangerous to emphasize on a child that they are talented and that they are smart because
Yeah.
you are teaching them to rely on that instead of
Totally.
relying on hard work.
Totally. And the talent and, the smarts can just be there alongside the work ethic you're building up. And I think that's when you get like really, truly some of the most impactful people on the planet. I think they have both. And if I could pick one, I'd rather be the diligent person.
Hmm.
And to some degree, I think I was kind of like sold a lie growing up that like it's, the smarts that get you where you want to go. I think it's helpful. But I think consistency and diligence um, really is what gets you there. But yeah, so basically, one of the major pieces was my manager. The second major piece for me was definitely deciding, okay, I'm going to work. I'm going to work hard. For me, it's almost, hopefully this comes off the right way, but it's never been hard for me to work on things, work very hard, almost disturbingly hard on things that I really enjoy,
Hmm.
right? Almost to a point where like people are like judging you for how much you're doing it. And a silly example that I'm sure a lot of you who are watching might be able to relate to if you're younger is like video games, for an example, right? It's super easy for me to just pick something up like a video game that I really enjoy and just quite literally play it from eyes open, eyes shut, right? It's not just video games, but I think there's like an addictive personality in there or something. So long story short, I basically did that with the business. I was constantly thinking about not how can I make money, which is funny, but how can I help people to the best of my ability?
Hmm.
How can I make this the absolute best experience for this person? And also, how can I meet with just way more people than anybody else? And I think just as matter of natural consequence. You know, I was just getting more reps than other people, right? And I to make a long story short, because Joanna knows that I'm gonna end up yapping for most of this podcast if I don't. My first year, I ended up making about 40K. My second year, I ended up closing out at around $400,000 in compensation, which I feel very blessed to say that. And I really had never had money like that in my life at all, ever, period. And what it was the result of me deciding to work hard and having great supporting staff, really. And I don't know if you remember this, but I actually had to take the following Q1 off completely after I had made that money, because it was just so like shocking to me that I didn't know what life was at that point. Like, oh crap. Like, is this success now? Like, what do I do? Right? What does this mean for my life, for me, for my fiance, etc.? So
Did you feel a burden at that point? Because I can go into this at some point, but I think what happened to me was there was a period of time where I did rapidly make a lot of money,
right.
and it was almost like a burden on me, where how am I supposed to maintain this, or can I maintain this, or how do I go from here?
Right.
Where I'm not gonna sit here and pretend it's not a privilege to have that burden,
Totally.
because if you feel like you have to succeed to the max, it's because people are expecting you to do it, and if people expect that from you, it's because you have something in you that is capable of doing that.
Right.
So it is a privilege to have that burden, but it's also or at least for me, it was incredibly crippling.
Sure.
Where even at the beginning of this year, I didn't fully take the first quarter off, but I essentially did, because I was struggling with, oh no. It was that moment of, oh no, what do I do now?
Totally.
Did you feel more of a burnout, or did you feel more of a, what is happening? Because it happened so fast for you. You made $400,000 in the span of 6 months. That's something that,
Not to interrupt. It was actually so ridiculous that I made 250,000 in one quarter.
yeah.
Actually, that was like, I mean, that's $1 million pace. I didn't keep it up for the full year, which would have been nuts. But when I literally, when I was like depositing money into places, they started telling me like I reached like the monthly limit for how much I can like deposit at a time. Right. It was just blowing my mind. And I had no time to spend it because I was just like working. But yeah.
How did you deal with that? With the burnout, and also just with the, almost like the shock of it?
Um, I mean, honestly, the crazy thing is, firstly, I wish that I was the kind of person where I could like stop and celebrate my wins, but that's just not me at all. I think that would be a lot more healthy. Um, but my mind immediately went to, as yours did, where do I go from here? And then I don't know if you did this, but my brain went to, okay, Dom, you have the money now. Let's not it up, right? Like you could really help, you know, your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, your stepmom, your stepdad, like all these people. Like, oh, you're actually on the path to do that now. Let's not mess it up. Um, and so how did I deal with the stress? I actually just started talking to people close to me. I basically opted everybody into like a therapy session without them coming to me at all. I'm like calling up my best friends, like guys, and I hadn't talked to anybody about it for like a month. I was just sitting in it, right? Um, it's kind of an awkward conversation. You're like complaining to people about money. You know what I mean?
It is, because it, it might seem like you're maybe bragging, or people might not understand it, where, oh, you're making
Totally,
all this money, why are you so stressed out? But more
totally.
money, more problems. They're just different problems than when you're poor, I would say.
Oh, 100%. And And you know that some people may take it the wrong way, so you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to like damage relationships. You don't want to come off insensitive. You're thinking about this ahead of time. So I guess I'd ask you the same. Like, what did you do? Who did who did you talk to when you started making money?
I think I'm blessed to one, I have maybe carefully curated my circle into people that I know understand me and understand the work that I do. Um, and also just understand how my mind works. And I think I'm definitely very lucky to have friends and just people around me that I know I can talk to about anything. And even if they don't experience it themselves, they will understand it to a certain degree.
Hmm.
So for me, when I was talking, I never felt that, oh, I have to filter some things out or I have to explain what I'm feeling. People just understood that.
Hmm.
I also have a lot of friends that have also been in this industry and have seen firsthand exactly what the job is like. So
Right.
it's not necessarily, I could tell them about my day and they would just be like, okay, yeah, I totally understand. To me, I had to take a step back, I would say, where I stopped meeting with clients for a little bit just so I could kind of reframe things because I felt like it was a disservice for me to go into meetings with this cloud that I had in my head because, well, I'm not going to be able to talk to them the same way or service them the same way that I would if I was in a clear headspace.
Totally.
So it felt like a disservice to them and to myself. So I stopped meeting with clients for a little bit. And I essentially just went back to why am I doing this? And that's when I centered it on myself a little bit, where what I struggled with the most was, do I have an income goal? Sure. Do I have a desire to succeed? 100%. But I didn't
Hmm.
know why. I was
Sure.
chasing a number, I was chasing success, but I didn't know why. I had no clear understanding as to why am I doing this.
Right.
And I reframed it in a way where, okay, well, I'm my own purpose in the sense of I just want to become the best person I can be and the best version of myself. And money is a tool to get there.
Totally.
Because money at the end of the day will buy you knowledge, it will buy you time.
Yeah.
The more knowledge you have, the more you grow at the end of the day.
100%.
So taking that step back really helped to kind of put into perspective why I'm doing this, why I'm chasing what I'm chasing. And that made me more energized to go back into it. And okay, now I know. So yeah.
So, sort of segueing out of that, I guess, what was that turning point for you that kind of, brought you even into this place where you're like, you almost have that privilege of how do I process this transformation in my business?
Interesting. I would say a turning point for me, and this might work for some people, it might not for others, was an absolute amount of self hatred.
Okay,
And I can definitely explain that, but I
please.
do think there's a lot of power in having bad emotions or negative emotions.
Okay.
I was somebody for a very long time that was extremely anxious. And it's funny because now I have a lot of people, even at work or just in my life, oh, you're so confident, or you, whatever, you're always doing something uncomfortable and out of your comfort zone. I'm like, that's crazy for me to hear because I'm
Mm.
so innately anxious and I'm so innately in my head and always
Wow.
just criticizing everything I do, judging everything that I do. So I was at a point in my life a couple of years ago where I just had all this anxiety, all this self hatred. And sure, modern psychology will tell you, oh, we'll cope with it. Start coping, go to therapy, whatever. To
Right.
me, I just kind of decided not to cope with it and just
Hmm.
take it. Meaning, I would just sit there and listen to it. Because at the end of the day, I felt, well, if I'm having these thoughts and these emotions and this anxiety, it has to come from somewhere. Meaning, there has to be some truth attached to it.
Hmm.
So once I actually stopped coping with it and actually sat with it, to the point where like I just couldn't do it anymore. It made me so uncomfortable that I had no choice but to break out of it.
Hmm.
So
Oh
for me
wow.
to break out of it, well, I had to change my habits and I had to change the way that I thought and looked at the world. And obviously once you transform one part of your life, everything else kind of follows. So
Wow.
That's how I approach that. I don't know if that's the way to go. But I do think there is a lot of power in feeling in the crap that you're telling yourself or
Totally.
sitting with it, because a lot of the times there is truth to it. There is a reason that you're feeling depressed or miserable or anxious. So instead of trying to self-soothe or dwindle it down, if you sit down and listen to it, you might find some things that are hard to grasp about yourself, but it can lead to some pretty big change.
That's really, really interesting. And I think that might be a very helpful perspective for a lot of the listeners, because I think media and a lot of just the content we consume, what we hear through word of mouth, I think would tell you like, oh, take these pills and,
Yeah.
go do X or Y or Z coping mechanism, you know? But it sounds like for you, the coping seemed more like a Band-Aid
Yeah.
than an actual solution. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think both should, to kind of backtrack a little bit, I don't think there's anything wrong with self-soothing or positive coping mechanisms. But I think it shouldn't be the solution or the number one solution. I think both should exist, where you should kind of sit down with it and figure out where it's coming from and why it's happening and why you're thinking that way.
Right.
Then once you figure that out, yeah, find a way to fix it and find a way to soothe that. But if you're always soothing the situation, you have no idea where it's coming from or how to even stop it from happening again. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to be a licensed psychotherapist or whatever, but I will
This is
say
not financial advice.
it's not financial advice, but it definitely worked for me, because I've struggled my entire life ever since I was a kid with just anxiety. And it was always just this feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm failing, everything that I do is wrong, I'm being judged. And like that just always stopped me from doing stuff or being a person. So once I stopped and I was like, so where is this coming from? And why is it happening? I kind of realized, oh, I have reason to hate myself, actually. I have things that are not in alignment with where I want to be or who I want to be. So I have to change that.
And so so you stopped, or at least stopped leaning as much onto the coping. You sat in that feeling and you took it as genuine, or at least like, hey, there's a reason why this is here, that
Yeah.
I'm feeling this. And you sat in it and you kind of thought through and you identified some things like, oh, it's probably from this or that character trait about myself that doesn't align with my goals or my values. And then you worked on it.
Yeah, I had definitely a lot of negative character traits that through years of trying to cope with it, you kind of
Right.
trick yourself into, oh, that's just me, or that's just my personality, or that's just how I am. But in reality, you're never bound to who you are. You can change that. You're not
Totally.
just this thing that can never change. There's a lot of growth that can happen if you just decide that you want that growth. So
100%.
I had all these personality traits or characteristics that were causing that anxiety and were causing that negative view of myself or negative self-image. So I was like, oh, I actually don't have to be that. I can just fix it.
So I guess for someone out there who might be listening right now, and maybe they resonate with what you shared about, that coping, right? They have these feelings. Maybe they're not a big fan of who they are, the part of their life that they're in right now. And you were able to, it seems, kind of work your way past that. And now you're this awesome, successful person. What advice would you give to someone who's in a similar position that you were in to maybe make a change or start moving at least one step in the right direction?
All right, at least for myself, I'm somebody that I'm very stubborn. So I think for somebody listening that might be in the same situation, I would say let those negative feelings sit with you to the point where it's almost like you have to get up and do something because you cannot sit with it any longer. Like it's so uncomfortable and so disturbing to the point where you just cannot sit there and do it anymore. So you have no choice but to choose something else.
Hmm.
As stupid as it might sound, or as backwards as it might sound, essentially let it get a lot worse.
That's a quote right
Yeah,
there.
just let it get the worst it can possibly, or the absolute worst it can possibly be. Just let it get to that point,
Yeah.
because once you're at that point, you will have no option and no choice but to do something about it.
That sounds I sense like some symbolism there with like life in general too, you know? Um,
When people say that if you're a rock bottom, that's the lowest you can go. So
yeah, like all these cliche quotes like rock bottom's a great platform to like push off of or something like that. I feel like there's 10 million quotes like that, but that's awesome. That's really inspiring.
you can view it as that, but it was not fun. It was not fun. It took. I mean, I'm still kind of in that phase to a certain degree, but
Right.
it took a long time of just being like, oh, I actually don't like that about myself, and I don't have to just almost give it permission
Right.
to, because that's what you're doing. Like if there's a negative trait about yourself that you recognize, like for example, I think I'm a very selfish person. Um, and I think that can be a negative thing and can be a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just reframed it in a way where I'm going to use my selfishness for my interests and other people's interests.
Okay.
That also sounds backwards, but what I mean by that is I'm selfish with my time.
Yep.
I'm selfish with my energy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
selfish with who I surround myself with. I'm selfish with what I say yes or no to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, doing that gives me more energy. At the end of the day, it gives me more time. It also allows me to put myself in a position where the things that I'm doing or the people I'm with are in
Totally.
alignment with my goals and my values and what I want. So that is a service to other people because I'm not being fake.
100%. I would say that I can relate to that to a large degree, and I've gotten definitely in trouble at certain points in my life, acting a little bit more selfishly. But like most things, I think there's pros and cons with just about everything. Um, the way, at least my frame with the selfishness is more, um, I try to make sure that I'm whole and I'm 100%. And that gives me the solid grounding to be able to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And so similar to being on a plane where they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first, right? They don't tell you to go and struggle and put it on someone else first and then maybe you can get yours on. No. If you're a caretaker to everybody else who's on that plane that you care about, yeah, nobody's getting a mask on unless yours is on, right? So in the same way, I try and make sure that I'm prioritizing um, my own sleep, my nutrition. For me, like my peace, and what do I mean by that? Just like I don't know. I'm actually an introverted guy. Some people are surprised by that sometimes. Um, I don't know why I chose an extroverted job, but by the time I get home, and you can ask my fiance this, I just have like no energy for other people, even her sometimes. So I need to first come home and be selfish with my own time. I'll tell her, I love her. I'll ask her about her day. And then I'm like in the other room by myself, decompressing. I don't know if that's relatable or not, but I know a lot of introverts can relate to that. Right. And so, I mean, just in general, by focusing on myself first, I feel like I best position myself to be able to take care of other people. Um, Now, the flip side of that, um, I think kind of the negative side of being selfless is when you don't take care of yourself first, you're not positioned very well to handle
Mm-hmm.
and take care of other people.
Yeah,
Do you know anybody like that personally?
I think so. And you actually, I think, end up causing more problems to the people around you. As you said, if you're not taking care of, for an example, your sleep. Let's say you're
Yep.
losing sleep or not, you don't even have time to sit down and eat or work out, or you are putting your health at a disadvantage. And if
Totally.
you're unhealthy, then how are you expected to be there for other people long term? You might be there for them in the short term, but if you want longevity, you kind of have to be a healthy human being. So you
100%.
are doing a disservice at the end of the day to yourself and to the people around you over the course of the years. Might not look that way for today or the next day, but if we think about it 20, 30 years, that's not going to work in your favor. So,
No, no, I think it's not completely unsustainable. And if you surveyed some of the most successful people on the planet, I wouldn't be surprised if they had that. You know, they fill up their own cup first so that it can spill out into others. Um, and hopefully she doesn't get too mad at me for mentioning her right now. But my mom, love her to death. She's a just such a good example of this. She's always, she's a bleeding heart, super empathetic, and she's always taking care of other people before her, which on the surface and just morally speaking is admirable. But how effective is it? Is the question, right? You know, there's been times when like she hasn't slept for like a day or so, or she hasn't eaten anything all day, and she's still trying her absolute best to help, but that help isn't as effective, you know? And so whenever I'm around her, I'm constantly telling her, like, Mom, I'm good. No, I ate before I got here. I don't need any food. Like, eat yourself, take care of yourself. And it's just not first nature to her, which nothing sounds more like a mom than that, really, I
right.
think. But
I actually have a question for you. It's a question that I've been asking myself recently, and I don't necessarily have a full answer to it, but I'm curious. Where do you think you see yourself, whether it's business or life wise? Where do you think you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
the next 3 to 5 years, okay. So that's not far enough where I'd be like delusional to make any claims. Um, well, firstly, I have my firstborn son coming in September. Archer, Archie, my fiance, uh, loves the name. I don't even think she's ever going to be calling him Archer. I think it's just calling him Archie all the time.
Is it after the comic or no?
Everybody's been asking that. No,
Okay.
that is a funny show though, and comic. Um, there's actually this app called Baby Names, and it functions like a dating app, which sounds so awkward. But you swipe left or right on names, and your partner does too, and then you match.
Oh,
Yeah,
did you guys do that?
yeah, we
Yeah.
did, and Arch was one of the names.
Okay.
And how I mean, I don't think I could think of anything more Gen Z than that. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we came up with your name from an app. It's like a dating app. Um, but anyway, so firstly, Archer's going to be here, and he's going to be somewhere between like 3 and 5. So that's nuts. So I'm going to be a dad. Um, what does that mean? Well, I really, really am going to be striving to be present in his life and in my fiance's life, future wife's life as well. I don't want to be that dad who like, you know, I know we just did a whole part on like me working 24/7, but I don't want to do that when he's around.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like the successful absent father cliche. I think that's terrible. Um, don't want him to turn into like a serial killer or anything like that.
Yeah.
So really striving to be present, but still effective, which I think is a hard balance, but I'm going to be working very hard to make sure that I strike that balance. I think our founder does a good job of striking that balance. He sets a really good example there. I think my manager also does. And so I have them to look to, thankfully, for that. Um, and so being a dad is one. Number two, I would say really just being a more effective leader. One of the skills that I would say I don't have innately, but I'm working on is delegation, right?
Are you a control freak?
Naturally,
Yeah.
yes. Naturally, yes, 100%. Like I'll delegate a task and then I'll be like that terrible manager looking over your shoulder, like making sure you're doing it right. Um, and so I don't know where that stems from. Maybe like some anxiety or something like that. I don't know. But working on setting those upfront agreements better, right? I want to be much, much better at that in 3 to 5 years. Because as I'm sure you know, there's no other way for me to I can't just get more hours out of my day. I just have to be more effective with them in order to be present for Archer, right? So getting better at delegation. Um, and I haven't quite made it here yet, but I also want to be at least a 7-figure earner or multi 7-figure earner. That's been, I mean, coming from a really poor background and a very consumerist background, right? Like parents maxing out their credit cards to buy like Christmas gifts, like that sort of background. I think the classic symbol of like you're not poor anymore is you're a millionaire, you have $1 million, right? And I haven't achieved that 7-figure income yet. It's something I very much want to. And in the next 3 to 5 years, I think that's completely reasonable as long as, I don't take my foot off the gas. So I'd probably say those 3 things.
Okay. So you want to be a millionaire and a dad.
Yep. Dad millionaire. Sounds good. Get a mug.
Perfect.
Let's
Okay.
get some mugs.
Where do you think the desire to be a millionaire comes from? Meaning, do you think it's something that you see as maybe if I get there I'll be happy, or is it more of a symbol of I'm skilled in my craft?
Probably insecurity,
Okay.
if we're being honest. I think in most scenarios, if you are making 7 figures a year, you're probably pretty decent at something. I think generally speaking, only valuable skills get you that level of money. And so I'd say it's a little bit of both, but for me, definitely insecurity, right? Because I could sit right now as like a multiple 6-figure earner, which, I'm doing just fine. And I guess I could coast right now. But for no real logical reason, I have it in my head that like, no, I want to do this. And I almost feel like life is kind of comprised of stuff like that, right? It doesn't really make sense logically, but it's just meaningful to you for some reason or another. Maybe I need one of those like mental deep dives that you kind of had to kind of figure out why. But at this moment, probably just trying to prove to myself something, prove the haters wrong. I don't know, people in high school, stuff like that.
Do you think you have a lot of haters?
Uh, no, probably not. I don't think people know who I am at all. But I think once people knew, I think I would probably begin to acquire a decent amount of haters once I became popular. I think generally speaking, people tend to not like. I think sometimes people are envious of money, and I don't think it has anything to do with me. Like, I don't think I'm special or people who make money, generally speaking, are special. I just think they're committed.
Yeah.
I think they're committed. They have a passion. They're really good at exchanging value with people, right? But I feel like it'd be kind of fun to have haters, though.
Well, if
you know?
people don't like you, then it's because you are doing something right. Because typically, the people that don't like you is because they see something in you that they want, or they
Mm-hmm.
see something in you that they can't achieve or think that they cannot achieve. Um,
Totally.
or you're just a horrible person, either or. But
Still remains to be seen. Who
yeah,
knows?
but if it's both, meaning you will always have people that like you and people that don't. The people that don't, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them and how they perceive
Right.
themselves and what they see in you that could potentially bother them or trigger them.
So life is a mirror.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I buy into that for sure. I definitely buy into that. I think.
I find that there's people that I know, meaning in my life, and even people that I don't know, and I have found that the people that I tend not to like the most, I am the most similar to. Um,
Interesting.
there's somebody that I can think of that I'm not going to name.
Oh.
But over the years, I've realized the reason that I clash so much with this person
Yep.
is simply because I am so similar to them. We
Interesting.
have so many similar traits, and it's probably the reason that I don't like this person.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just
Interesting.
it has changed my perspective on it where sometimes if I don't like somebody or if I don't like what they're saying, I'm like, wait a second, that feels like something I would say or something I would do.
Not to sound all therapist and whatnot, because I'm the furthest thing from that. That might even harken back to what you were saying earlier, where you had that like phase of self-hate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That might be connected in some way. Um, yeah, I think I definitely agree with that assertion that life's a mirror. Even in competition, one thing that my manager is awesome at is reminding me like the competition is yourself,
Mhm.
you and your best self, waking up that day and making the most right decisions you possibly can. And then there's the other thing: comparison is the thief of joy.
Mhm.
I really resonate with that because if you're measuring success in some sort of variable, let's just call it like money, right? Which definitely that's not the peak level of success, but let's just say it's that. There's always going to be someone with more money.
Mhm.
Always, always, always. And so, if you're constantly comparing yourself to others to try and find happiness, you're never going to get it, in my opinion.
Well, even going back to you and using you as an example, I remember when you were rapidly earning the amount of money that you were making. Obviously, we all knew and we were all watching it happen live time. And I just remember being, okay, well, I'm not going to compare myself to him because I'm just not willing to work that hard. Um, and by work that hard, I mean I'm not exaggerating when I say you were working 24/7, where all you did was probably work and sleep. I'm not even sure how you ate during, because your calendar was something that it wasn't my calendar, but it gave me a headache just to simply look at it. But I just remember thinking to myself, I'm not willing to do that, so I'm not going to compare myself to him. And that's just the way that I view everything, where everybody's on a different life path, everybody has a different set of circumstances, everybody has a different mindset or different goals, or so I can't compare myself to the person next to me because I have no idea why they're
Totally.
working towards what they're working for. So you can only, if I'm better than I was last year, if I'm better than I was last month, then
Yep.
to me that's good enough and that's growth, because in my head I'm the only person that really matters at the end of the day when it comes to my own success and personal growth.
And that's a very healthy mindset. Um, I'm a little bit jealous of that. I'm not going to lie. I think I still have a little bit of that people pleasing,
Mm.
unfortunately. And I really don't talk about self hate. I don't like that part of myself at all. Um, sometimes I can feel a little bit conflict averse. Not like to the degree where if there's a conflict that needs to happen, I won't have the conflict, but I feel that internal resistance. Like I don't want to. Or if someone tends to be very likely to start conflicts or just be disagreeable, I'm just not even going to want to be around that person. whether it's for the better or for the worse, right? Or I'll find like agreements or arrangements that might not be preferable to me, even just to avoid that conflict, right? That part of myself I really don't like. And I think I almost feel like that might come from having um, almost like a very strong, overbearing father figure growing up. Not to turn this into a therapy session, but um, he was just so unforgiving when it came to exacting his will or what he wanted. And so from that, I had to kind of grow up in an environment of, you know, trying to anticipate like what kind of mood was he in?
Mm.
How could I reduce the likelihood of him being angry towards not just me, but like siblings, right? Stuff like that.
Well, then is it people pleasing or survival?
Well,
Or both?
or both. I think then felt like survival, but I think it kind of manifested itself into a little bit of the people pleasing, maybe a little bit of like mental scarring. But like most things, I think there's a pro and a con with just about everything. And I think it has given me one of the abilities I feel comfortable admitting I have is a sense of people,
Okay.
an ability to read emotions, feelings, kind of the vibe in the room. I think that I have that in spades, thankfully. And I think it's kind of like the positive side of the people pleasing, if that makes sense. I use it in client scenarios all the time, right? Like, oh, this is an agreeable client. This person's very disagreeable. This person, thinks with the more logical part of their brain and really tries their best to make decisions off of that. This person likes to lean into what other people are doing, right? Like I really, really keep that front of mind at all times. And, it's never really been difficult for me, I'd say.
Okay. Well, as somebody that has proven to be successful in this industry, what is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody not just starting in this business, but starting a business overall? Because at the end of the day, what we do is very akin to you're starting your own business because
Totally.
while we're part of a firm or part of a greater team,
Yep.
we're all our own entities at the end of the day, and it's up to us to really figure out what we want to do, who we want to work with. So at the end of the day, it is similar to just starting your own thing. So what would you say to somebody that's maybe doubting whether that's the route they want to take, or somebody that's struggling with whether they want to put themselves in a situation like that where it's risky to do it for sure? But what would you say to somebody in that scenario?
Great question, Joanna. Honestly, I would say you first start by doing a self-examination. I think that probably the most important thing when it comes to business or this business is self-awareness, right? So start by doing a self-examination. Who are you around other people? Who are you by yourself? Are you good with money? Are you bad with money? Do you have financial stability at the moment? Do you have a nest egg, right? You're not just, trying to start a business off of $0, 0 cents and having to pay bills, right? Because that's a bad idea. Even a good business idea requires proper execution, and the likelihood of you executing goes up like ridiculously if you give yourself the wiggle room to be able to make mistakes. That takes having a nest egg. You're not going to get it right the first time most of the time, right? That's just, that's really hitting the lottery, is starting a business and getting it right the first time. That's completely unlikely. And how financially stable you are will kind of equate to how much wiggle room you have to make those mistakes and to learn. A lot of these business figures like Alex Hormozy, for example, someone that I'm a big fan of. I want to say, and I'm probably going to misquote this, but he had some like 14 or 15 failed businesses, some ridiculous amount of failed businesses. And then he eventually had Gym Launch. And he ended up selling Gym Launch for tens of millions of dollars and being successful. And so the first thing is do a self-inspection, understand what your strengths are, what your knowledge is. Second, it makes a lot of sense to be financially stable. Okay. And third, you need to be willing to bet on yourself. Betting on yourself is really what business is at the end of the day. Betting on yourself and trying to find the right people to be your partners. And so that's what I'd say. Oh, and then fourth would probably just be ready to work ridiculously hard. And a lot of people like the idea of business because financial freedom, eventually you're not going to have to work that hard, right? Totally true. A common phrase that we get in this business is, at first you're overworked and underpaid, but then eventually at some point, and you kind of don't even realize it when it happens, only in hindsight, you're ridiculously overpaid and it doesn't even feel like you're working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Business is the same. And, you have to do a ridiculous amount of work and have so much grit up front to get to that point. And if you don't have that, you're probably going to fail. Honestly, that's just the realistic answer, I think.
No, I completely agree with that. I think people see the idea of starting their own business as this, oh, it's a great idea to do because they see other people succeeding in it. But before anybody should do anything like that, one, they should talk to other successful people and see how they got there and what they had to do and figure out, as you said, if you are willing to do that. Because I've seen a lot of people that try to start something and they're just not willing to do the hard things, or they're not willing to be underpaid for X amount of time, or they're not willing to fail because failure is just so hard for them, where their confidence is crushed. They see it as almost like the end all be all. They don't have that resilience, where I think you should see failure as it's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be great at something if you try it. So if you frame it where failure is just something that's supposed to happen, it's not going to have this crushing impact on you. So yeah, for somebody starting out, they really need to figure out whether they are willing to do the hard things that other people around them have also done.
Yeah. And where do you think people get this notion that like they can just start a business like it's like a side hustle or something?
Probably from people like us on social media talking about it and how well they do in it. So, but we also sometimes don't go into the nitty gritty of how crushing it was at the beginning, or it can be still. Yep. Even if you're doing really well, it can be really crushing and really stressful. I lose sleep sometimes because oh no, when I have all these things to do, I don't know what to do. You're figuring out how to even, we use this analogy all the time. You're building the plane while you're also flying it. So you
totally.
You have like 15 different hats that you're wearing. So even if you're doing well in it, it's also incredibly tolling on your mental health sometimes.
100%.
So yeah, people get the notion that it's a great idea because they hear other people do really well in it, but sometimes the dirty part of it or the hard part of it doesn't get showcased as much. So
yeah, because that's not sexy. That doesn't get views.
No.
Nobody wants to see that. It's depressing, but it's what people need to see.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dom. I know it's kind of a drive for you, all the way from Seaport to where I'm at. So definitely thank you for being here on a Sunday where I think this is the first weekend in 2 months that it's sunny and warm out here in New England. So thank you for doing that, because not a lot of people would. I really appreciate your insight and just talking to you overall. And this is cool because, I mean, we've worked together for 3 years, but we don't work in the same office. So we only get to see maybe fragments or seconds of each other over Zoom every once in a while. So I really do appreciate the time you took to be here today.
It was a pleasure. Yes, it's like 80 to 90 degrees out, and you know, there's definitely a part of me that would rather be outside right now, but that's exactly where I'm going to go with my fiance after this. So that's fine.
Perfect. Well, enjoy the drive back.
Thank you.